In this video, I will be explaining generally how a neuron works. We start with the neuron in a state where it is not signaling another neuron. It is at its resting potential, which means that there are more negatively charged potassium ions inside the dendrite membrane and more positively charged sodium ions outside the dendrite membrane, here. So, the neuron is negatively charged on the inside relative to the outside. The main body of the cell that spherically surrounds the nucleus is called the soma. Surrounding the soma are dendrites, which are spiky fibers that receive information and send it in the direction of the soma and the axon. When a neuron is stimulated by a signal, sodium channels open up in a rippling effect across the membrane of the dendrites, where the signal is received. This is called depolarization because it allows positively charged sodium ions to enter the membrane, therefore depolarizing the membrane. Like this. All around the dendrites. If enough stimulus is present, the depolarizing current can cause the neuron to reach its threshold, which means the neuron is ready to fire an action potential. This only happens when the neuron receives the type of stimulus where the excitatory signal minus the inhibitory signal exceeds the threshold. The action potential is an electrical charge fired by a neuron that travels down its axon. The axon extends from the soma, and it can be long or short depending on its function, and it branches off from the soma at a connecting point called the axon hillock. Schwann cells surround the axon in a covering called the myelin sheath, which insulates the axon so it can carry electrical impulses efficiently. The spaces between each Schwann cell are what we call the nodes of Ranvier. As the action potential moves down the axon, and I'll show you this. As the action potential moves down the axon, depolarization occurs in the same area, like it did in the dendrites. As the impulse approaches, sodium channels open to allow sodium ions to enter the membrane, and following the impulse, sodium pumps move the sodium ions back to the outside of the membrane to recreate the resting potential of the neuron, like so. etc., all the way down. The axon itself ends at the synaptic terminals, or terminal branches, which connect to the dendrites of another neuron. Neurotransmitters are, in essence, chemical messengers. These little guys. And when the synapses receive the electrical current from the action potential, these neurotransmitters are sent from them across the synaptic gap and to the receptor sites of dendrites of other neurons. They go like this, in essence. These neurotransmitters can be either excitatory or inhibitory, so they bind to distinctly different receptor sites on the receiving neuron. Excitatory neurotransmitters stimulate a positive or activating change in that neuron, while inhibitory neurotransmitters stimulate a negative or sedating change. While this is happening, a process called reuptake can occur, where some of the neurotransmitters are reabsorbed into the original neuron synapse instead of binding to another neuron. They go like this. And they are either broken down by enzymes into different reusable neurotransmitters, or they are destroyed. Some variations in this process are the cause of certain personality traits and mental disorders. So, there you have it. That, in a nutshell, is a summary of how a neuron works.